The cart hits the marble floor first. Mop handle, spray bottles, a yellow plastic bucket, a folded gray rag. All of it skids across the conference room floor while 12 men in dark suits watch without blinking. Josephine does not move. She stands at the center of the room with her hands at her sides and her chin level. The fluorescent light above hums. Someone near the window clears his throat. A junior lieutenant is still filming her on his phone. Dong-Hyun stands at the head of the long table. He does not raise his voice. He never raises his voice. That is the thing people forget until it is too late. The quietest man in a room this powerful is always the most dangerous one. Check the bag. 2 guards pull the cleaning satchel inside out. White cloths. Spare gloves. A small bottle of eucalyptus concentrate. A folded laminate contract printed in Korean. Nothing. The room waits. One of the senior executives presses his lips together. A sound starts somewhere near the back. Low. Then louder. 1 man laughs. Then 3. Then the entire room fills with it. Sharp, contemptuous, the kind of laughter that is meant to flatten a person where they stand. Josephine looks at Dong-Hyun. Only at Dong-Hyun. You still haven't learned the lesson he tried to teach you. The laughter stops. Dong-Hyun goes absolutely still. His jaw does not move. His hands do not move. But something behind his eyes does, something old and startled and afraid. He opens his mouth. The building alarm sounds before a single word leaves it. If you're already holding your breath, good. Stay right here. The reason Josephine walked into this building is nothing like it first appears. And the man she just named? He has been gone for 11 years. Somewhere on the 32nd floor, a figure leans toward a hidden monitor and whispers. She said the phrase. Josephine arrives at 6:47 in the morning. She wears the gray uniform of Hanseong Contract Cleaning Services. She carries her cart through the service entrance, past the security desk where the guard barely looks up, and into the elevator reserved for maintenance staff. The elevator smells like industrial solvent and someone else's cigarette. She presses B2. The headquarters of the Dong-Hyun group fills 40 floors of a glass tower in central Seoul. From the street, it looks like any other corporate building. All edge and reflection, designed to communicate stability. Inside, it feels different. Josephine notices it within the first 10 minutes. The way employees walk. Not fast, not slow. Careful. Calculated. The way people move when they know they are being watched and have learned to perform normalcy, so well it has become its own kind of tension. She mops the corridor outside the executive floor bathrooms and counts 3 things that are wrong. First, the camera in the northeast corner is tilted 4 degrees toward the wall. It is covering the wrong angle. Not broken. Redirected. Second, 2 security badges sit in a tray at the unmanned reception station near the stairwell. They are not the same tier. Someone swapped them and left them there. Not an accident. A message or a test or both. Third, the office at the end of the West Hall, marked records, restricted access, closes at 11:42 p.m. every night according to the automated log posted in the maintenance room. But the floor beneath the door is worn in a pattern that only accumulates from foot traffic happening well after midnight. Josephine pushes her cart around the corner and writes nothing down. She never writes anything down. She learned that lesson before she learned how to fold a hospital corner on a bedsheet. Before she learned what it costs to let someone see what you notice. Before everything, there was a man who told her, the most dangerous asset you own is your attention. Never let anyone see where it lands. She had been 23 then, cleaning offices in a building that no longer exists, and he had been the only executive who ever said good morning to her by name. She had not heard from him in 11 years. Until the call came. She empties a bin near the photocopier and does not react when she sees, reflected in the machine's glass panel, a senior lieutenant at the far end of the corridor raise a phone and hold it still. He is photographing her. She turns. She smiles. She moves her cart to the next station. By the time she is out of sight, she has already identified the lieutenant's lanyard, his badge tier, his floor access level, and the brand of earpiece tucked against his left ear. Her phone vibrates once, at 7:23 a.m. A message. No sender name. For words. Watch the cleaner. Confirmed. His name was Director Kong Sung-woo, and he was not famous. That was the point of him. He spent 30 years moving between organizations without accumulating a single headline, a single photograph that could be traced, a single enemy who knew his actual name. He believed power was most effective when it could not be located. He believed the most important people in any building were the ones everyone ignored. He wrote none of this down. He taught it instead in small exchanges in corridors to the people nobody noticed watching. He chose Dong-Hyun when Dong-Hyun was 26 and reckless and brilliant and certain he already knew everything worth knowing. Kong spent 4 years correcting that certainty. He taught Dong-Hyun how to read a room before entering it, how to identify loyalty without testing it in ways that destroyed it, how to distinguish between a person who respected power and a person who feared it, and why the difference mattered more than anything else he would ever learn. And then, without warning, Kong disappeared. The official record said, retirement, relocation, a small house on the East Coast. The people who had known him closely said nothing because they had learned from him not to. What none of them knew, what Dong-Hyun himself had never been told, was that in the months before he vanished, Kong had made one final decision. He had identified a pattern inside the organization. A pattern he recognized from 30 years of watching how institutions collapse from within. Not through force, not through scandal, through information, quietly reshaped over time by a single person with access and patience and no visible motive. He could not prove it yet, but he could prepare for the day someone else would need to. He found Josephine on a Tuesday afternoon in a building 2 kilometers away. She was cleaning a boardroom where a quarterly review had just ended. He watched her move through the room with the efficiency of someone who has learned to be invisible and developed, inside that invisibility, an extraordinary precision of observation. He introduced himself. She did not seem surprised. He visited twice more. Then he handed her a sealed envelope and gave her a single instruction. If the day ever comes, and you will know it when it does, go. Say the phrase. That is all. She had not opened the envelope. She had carried it for 11 years inside a zippered pocket of her cleaning satchel, behind the spare gloves. She knew the phrase. She had used it this morning. And someone else, it turns out, knew she had it. Dong-Hyun calls the search on the 48th hour. He does it the way he does most things, without consultation, without announcement, without a single word of hesitation that might look like doubt. He says, the contract cleaner. Conference room. Now. And the people around him move because they have learned that stillness in response to his instructions is a different kind of error. The security team empties her cart in front of 12 witnesses. They find nothing, and the room erupts. Josephine watches Dong-Hyun watch the laughter. She watches him let it happen, watches him use it, the way a man who has studied power learns to use every available resource, including other people's contempt. He is trying to teach her something with this moment. He wants her rattled, off balance. Small. She does not give him that. She says the phrase. She watches what it does to him. And then, while the alarm is still sounding somewhere above them, while the room pivots and people move and attention cascades toward the noise, a folder disappears from the conference table. Not dramatically, not visibly, the way things disappear in rooms where everyone is looking at the wrong person. Josephine sees it. She is the only one who sees it, because she is the only one in the room who is not looking at Dong-Hyun when his composure cracked. She looks at the table. She looks at the space where the folder was. She looks at the hands of every person moving toward the door. She resumes mopping. Later, in the service corridor, she runs through what she knows. The folder contained the draft terms of a pending acquisition. A subsidiary Dong-Hyun had been quietly consolidating for 8 months. She knows this because she cleaned the projector room the night the terms were being refined. She knows the acquisition code name. She knows the counterparty. She knows that if those terms were altered in even 2 or 3 places, the deal would collapse in a way that looked like Dong-Hyun's own misjudgment. Not theft. Sabotage disguised as negligence. She considers going to him with this information. She considers what Kong told her 11 years ago at the end of their final meeting. Trust is not given. It is earned under pressure. Wait until you can see what he is made of before you tell him what you know. She has been watching Dong-Hyun for 48 hours. She knows what he is capable of. She does not yet know what he is made of. She wheels her cart toward the east corridor. She is not finished here. On the third day, Josephine maps the pattern. It starts with the document logs. Every restricted file in the executive system generates an access timestamp when opened and a separate timestamp when returned to storage. She cannot access the system directly, but she can access the paper shred logs in the maintenance room, and the shred logs tell her something specific. Documents are being generated that are not appearing in the disposal queue. They're going somewhere else. She cross-references the room access data by watching which spaces she is restricted from cleaning and which spaces have had their cleaning schedules quietly altered in the past 3 months. For offices, 3 of them are senior lieutenants. 1 is an external legal advisor. She does not pursue the external advisor. That is too visible. She watches the lieutenants. The pattern clarifies over 72 hours. The documents are not being stolen. They're being returned, every one of them, within 48 hours of removal. But when they come back slightly different. A number adjusted, a name repositioned, a clause reordered in a way that changes meaning without altering the visible logic of a paragraph. The conspiracy is not financial. It is epistemic. Someone is slowly reshaping the information Dong-Hyun uses to make decisions. Not stealing from him. Poisoning the well so quietly, so incrementally, that by the time the decisions fail, they will look like his own failures, his own misjudgments, his own deteriorating leadership. The goal is not to take his money. The goal is to make him destroy himself. Josephine cleans the east corridor and thinks about Kong. The betrayal, he had told Dong-Hyun once. She had learned this over the years, from the way Kong spoke about his work, will never come through the front door. It will come through the one you leave open because you trust the person standing next to it. She finds fingerprints on the handle of a locked credenza in the East Archive room. She finds them because she is the one who polished that credenza 4 days ago, and the print she is looking at did not come from anyone on the authorized access list. She has memorized every badge and face on that list. She photographs the print using the camera on the small device she carries in the zippered pocket behind her spare gloves. She sends it to one number. The response comes back in 11 minutes. That print belongs to a man declared legally dead 7 years ago. Josephine sets her phone face down on the cleaning cart. She picks up her mop. She does not slow her pace. Somewhere above her, on a floor she has not yet been permitted to clean, something very old is beginning to move again. The blueprints are in the basement. Not the operational blueprints that Hanseong Cleaning Services received when they onboarded the contract. The original architectural drawings from 1987, before the building's first major renovation, filed in the maintenance archive between a gas safety certificate and a stack of obsolete fire suppression manuals. Josephine finds them at 11:18 p.m. on a Thursday. She finds them because the floor plan in the maintenance room shows a dead-end service corridor on sublevel 3. Dead-end corridors do not exist in efficiently designed buildings. They cost money. They serve no function, unless they once led somewhere and that somewhere was sealed off. She takes the blueprints to the supply closet at the end of the B1 corridor and spreads them under the work light. There it is. A service passage runs from sublevel 3 all the way to the 14th floor. It predates the renovation by 12 years. It does not appear on any current building schematic. It connects. She traces the route with one finger to a decommissioned HVAC maintenance room on the 14th floor that is listed in the current system as storage, non-operational. She also finds something else in the blueprints. Every security camera in this building has a documented field of view based on its mounting specifications. She has been noting the redirected cameras since day one. She draws the blind spots on the schematic now, all of them one by one. They form a path, straight from the sublevel service entrance to Dong-Hyun's private office on the 38th floor. If you are still with me, and I know you are, drop a comment right now that says, I see it. Because what Josephine has just found is not an accident. It is infrastructure. Someone built this. Or, someone has been using what was already here. The next 30 minutes of this story are going to change what you thought you understood about everyone in this building. Josephine folds the blueprints. She moves toward the sublevel 3 passage. It has not been sealed. The lock is new.
Modern.
Recent installation on a wall that has not been touched in years. She looks at the edges of the panel. No dust at the hinges. Someone opens this regularly. She listens. She hears, faint and distant, filtered through the ventilation system, the sound of someone moving, the rustle of clothing.
A drawer.
Then stillness. Then a voice, low, clear, unhurried, speaking through the ductwork. The voice says her name. Not the cleaner. Not the contract worker. Not Han-seong, employee number 47. Her name. Josephine Adiz. Her full name. The way only one person in the world ever said it, with the syllables of the second name given their full weight. The way her mother had taught her to say it. The way she had said it herself the first time she introduced herself to a man in a boardroom 2 kilometers away. 11 years ago. She does not move. She waits. The envelope opens on the floor of the B1 supply closet at 11:47 p.m. Josephine has carried it for 11 years. She has moved it from one cleaning satchel to the next, from one city to the next, through the long, careful years when she worked her way through buildings where powerful men conducted their business in front of people they assumed could not understand it. She has pressed it flat when it crinkled. She has dried it when it got damp. She has never once opened it. She tears the seal now and reads what is inside. One sentence. Kang's handwriting, small and exact, in blue ink on cream paper. Trust the one who admits being wrong. She folds it. She puts it in her breast pocket. She sits with what she now understands. Josephine was never the target. The security sweep, the conference room humiliation, the camera watching her. All of it was reactive, not strategic. Dong-Hyun's surveillance apparatus moved against her because it detected an anomaly, not because anyone inside that system understood who she was or why she was here. Dong-Hyun is not the target either. The organization is. The goal, Josephine now understands, is to dismember the loyalty structure from within. Every altered document, every reposition clause, every manufactured suspicion, these are not attacks on any individual. They are attacks on the tissue of trust between people who have worked together for years. Once that tissue is degraded enough, the lieutenants begin to suspect each other. Dong-Hyun begins to make decisions based on corrupted information and blames the results on the people around him. Civil war begins without a single public confrontation. By the time anyone can identify the source, the damage is irreversible. Kang had named this exact strategy years ago in a document Josephine had never read but that she now knows exists somewhere in this building. He called it the interior collapse. He had seen it before. He had spent his career building organizations resilient enough to survive it. And then he had watched Dong-Hyun, year by year, dismantle exactly the thing that would have protected him. A knock at the supply closet door.
Low.
3 times. Deliberate. Josephine opens it. Dong-Hyun stands in the corridor. No security. No lieutenant. No earpiece. He is wearing a dark jacket without a tie, which is the first time she has seen him in this building without one. He looks, for a moment, simply like a man who has not slept. He says, "I owe you an apology." His voice is the same. Quiet. Controlled. But something inside it is different now. There is no performance in it. No strategy. Just a man who has said a thing he does not say. Josephine looks at him. She cannot yet tell if the apology is the truth, or if it is the most dangerous move on the board. The maintenance tunnel runs narrow and smells of old electrical insulation and concrete dust undisturbed for decades. Josephine moves through it with a small torch, following the path the blueprints showed her, counting the meters. The tunnel curves once, rises, and opens through a panel into a room that the building does not officially remember exists. 14 square meters. No windows. A long folding table covered with monitors, hard drives, and a tangle of cables that have been routed through the ventilation ducts with the kind of patience that belongs to someone who planned years ahead. The screens are dark but alive. They are in sleep mode, not off. Someone was here recently. Josephine wakes a monitor with one key. The interface that opens is a surveillance archive. recordings,
Hundreds of them.
filing back years. She navigates by date and recognizes the rooms. The conference room on the 38th floor, the executive corridor, the private dining room on 42, the lobby, the car park, the private lift that only Dong-Hyun's access level can operate. She has a camera. She has years of video evidence. She begins to understand the scale of it. Every promotion in the past 6 years. Every dismissal. Every interdepartmental conflict. Every contract dispute. Every argument between senior lieutenants that escalated into a restructure. All of it visible here, cross-referenced with dates, with document logs, with the access records of a single person who appears in the background of meeting after meeting, never prominent, never at the center of anything, always present at the exact moment when information changed hands. The mastermind never needed violence. Only information. Only presence. Only patience. Josephine scrolls to a file marked with last month's date. She opens it. She sees a face she recognizes. Not from the staff directory. Not from the executive briefings she has observed in her peripheral vision over 5 days of cleaning. From Dong-Hyun's side. Always at Dong-Hyun's side. The man who has been there longest. The advisor Dong-Hyun inherited from the previous leadership and kept because he was useful, because he was quiet, because he always seemed to know the right thing to say at the exact right moment. Because he always seemed to know. Josephine closes the file. She sits in the dark room for exactly 3 minutes. Then she goes to find Dong-Hyun. He does not believe her. Not at first. He sits across from her in the decommissioned room, and his face does the thing it always does when he is protecting something. It goes still, composed, a controlled surface that gives nothing away. He listens without interrupting, which is a form of respect, and without reacting, which is a form of defense. When she finishes, he is quiet for a moment. Then, he has been with me for 9 years. Yes, Josephine says. He was vetted. By himself. He ran the vetting process for 3 of the last 4 personnel reviews. I found the scheduling records. Silence. Show me, Dong-Hyun says. So she does. She brings him through it the way Kong would have done it. Evidence first, interpretation second, conclusions only after the pattern has been laid out so clearly that the conclusion draws itself. The access logs. The document timestamps. The camera blind spots that form a path. The fingerprint on the credenza, the surveillance archive, the footage of the advisor's hands on files that should not have been in his possession, in corridors where he should not have been present, at hours when no one was watching. Dong-Hyun does not speak for a long time. When he does, his voice is changed. Not the composure, that is still there, it will always be there. But underneath it, something has shifted. Something load-bearing. He was teaching me, Dong-Hyun says slowly. Every time I made a decision that failed. Every time a negotiation broke down. Every time I questioned someone's loyalty and was wrong. He was there. Telling me what it meant. Telling me why it happened. Telling me who to blame. Yes. And I listened. Yes. Dong-Hyun stands. He moves to the window. There is no window, only wall, and he stops when he reaches it and stands with his back to her for a moment. My greatest mistake, he says, wasn't trusting the wrong person. He turns. It was ignoring the right one. Josephine does not respond to that. She gives him the space to say it without making it mean more than it should mean yet. She is watching his hands. His hands are steady. He is not performing this. He is processing it, here, in real time, the way people do when the ground beneath them has just revealed itself to be something other than what they believed. There is one move, she says. One. And it has to be public. Dong-Hyun looks at her. He has to walk into it himself, she says. That is the only way it holds. Can you make him walk into it? I don't have to, she says. He already thinks he has won. The executive meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. All senior lieutenants. All department heads. The legal advisor. The external board members attending by video link from 3 cities. Dong-Hyun had called it 2 days earlier, framing it as an emergency strategic review. The advisor had been the one to circulate the agenda. He had written the agenda himself. He stands at the front of the conference room at 9:04 a.m. with the confidence of a man who has spent 9 years being the most informed person in every room he has entered. His name is Bae Jun-sik, and he has the particular ease of someone who has never been caught, which over time becomes indistinguishable from innocence. He speaks with precision. He moves through the opening agenda items with authority. He proposes at 9:18 a.m. that the board consider initiating a leadership review process. He cites 3 strategic failures from the past 14 months. He has the documentation ready. He has always had the documentation ready. He does not notice Josephine until she opens the door. She enters from the side entrance at 9:22 a.m., wearing her gray uniform, carrying nothing except a small tablet. She walks to the center of the room. She does not ask permission. She does not apologize. She sets the tablet on the conference table and taps the screen once. The monitors around the room activate simultaneously. Every screen shows the surveillance archive. Bae Jun-sik's face does not change immediately. That is telling. A man who was innocent would react in confusion. He reacts instead with the microsecond of rapid calculation that Josephine was waiting for. She narrates. Not loudly. Not with accusation in her voice. The way a person presents evidence when the evidence does not require dramatization. This is the document alteration in June of last year. This is the access timestamp showing entry to the restricted archive. This is the footage of the credenza. This is the fingerprint match. This is the scheduling record showing Bae ran the vetting process that cleared him for the access level that made all of this possible. This is the moment. This is the moment, she says, when the acquisition document disappeared during the conference room search. The room is very quiet. Bae speaks. He begins a sentence about the integrity of the process, about how this constitutes an unverified accusation brought by an unauthorized contractor. Dong-Hyun interrupts him. For the first time in 9 years, Dong-Hyun says in front of witnesses that he made a mistake, that he trusted without verifying, that he allowed proximity to substitute for evidence of loyalty. He says this plainly, without self-pity, without performance. He looks at the board members and the lieutenants and he says, I was wrong. Now, let me show you who was right. He gestures toward the monitors. Bae Jun-sik loses his allies inside a single meeting. Not through confrontation, not through threats, through the unbearable, irrefutable specificity of documented truth. After the meeting, in the corridor outside, Josephine is already collecting her cart. Dong-Hyun comes to stand beside her. He does not speak for a moment. Then, why didn't you warn me sooner? I needed to see, she says, what you were made of. And? She looks at him. You admitted you were wrong, she says. In front of everyone. Yes. That was the answer. He asks her, finally in the corridor, why Kong chose her. Josephine picks up her cart handle. He wasn't looking for someone powerful, she says. He already knew plenty of powerful people. He was looking for someone impossible to corrupt. Dong-Hyun is quiet. He believed, she continues, that the most accurate observer in any institution is the person the institution has decided does not matter. Because that person has nothing to protect by lying. She checks the brake on the cart's wheel. It is habit, not necessity. Her hands remember how to do this without thought. He found me mopping a boardroom, she says. And he was the only executive in 30 years of that work who ever asked me what I noticed. Dong-Hyun says nothing. There is nothing to say to that. She moves toward the service corridor. As she does, something happens that has not happened in 5 days. The workers in the hall, the administrators, the junior staff, the cleaners from the contracted crew who have watched all of this from the edges, they part for her. Not out of deference. Not because they are performing something. Because they recognize a person who came here and did a thing at great personal risk for no personal gain, and human beings, when they see that clearly, respond to it the way they respond to all real things. They nod. They look at her. They let her through. Dong-Hyun watches from the corridor. The service door closes. The building stands. But it is different now, not because ownership changed. Because the right person was finally seen. If Josephine's story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me in the comments, which moment changed how you saw Dong-Hyun? Was it the apology? Or was it earlier than that?